Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, we're turning our attention to a matter that ordinarily you may not think you need to stop and have a look. But first, let's introduce our guest. We've got Dr. Ojualakpe Sholanke, who is a National Project Manager, ANRIN Project, and Dr. Zainab Ahmed Idris, who is a Project Coordinator, ANRIN Project for Kaduna State. Now, both of them are talking about, we'll be talking about nutrition, malnutrition, actually, because there's actually a National Council on Malnutrition. And the reason is because the Vice President, who chairs that, did say not long ago that at the moment, we have a severe case of malnutrition, which is about 33% of the country. And that at the moment, we lose 2.5 billion naira annually for this deficiency. And that is something that should concern anyone. So, I mean, this figure, given the economic challenges back and forth, may just be on the rise when they have the next check or data gathering process. But I should start by asking, first of all, when you talk about malnutrition, you even know how to look, wait a minute, so what is it with this? Do you get the same reaction from people who think, why should I be talking about malnutrition in the first place?
Yeah, malnutrition, the issue of malnutrition. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The issue of malnutrition in Nigeria is such one that is in an alarming state that everybody, every stakeholder, everyone should be involved. So I'm not even surprised that one of the key agenda points of the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, His Excellency, through the Ministry of Health, has put the issue of malnutrition as one of his priority, at the moment, because I wish we have, a pictorial view. There's a distinct difference between the brain of a malnourished child and that of a well-nourished child, to the extent that a malnourished child has the likelihood of either dying or not fulfilling its potential. So you can link that to economic index in future, because he might not be able to do well in school. He might not even be able to attend school in the first place. He won't be able to do well. And eventually, it grows to be, an adult who might not be able to fend for himself. So you can see the economic impact directly relating to issue of malnutrition.
I'm just a little curious. Whenever it is we think about malnutrition, I'm wondering whether, is it as a result of ignorance? That people do not know what foods to eat in what combination, because oftentimes that's what nutrition is about, knowing what to eat, what is appropriate for you at whatever age, and in the quantity that you should eat it. Or is it that, people have become so poor that they know these foods but can barely afford them?
So it's actually multifactorial. We can have poverty, being responsible for malnutrition, in fact, lack of access to healthcare, lack of access to the right food, ignorance is still one of it, because there's a direct linkage between, education of a woman and the way the child of such a woman would perform, or the woman would be able to take care of his or her family.
But in Nigeria, what have we found to be the largest cause of malnutrition?
So for Nigeria, ignorance is still one of it. Lack of access to healthcare services, water and sanitation, and poor maternal and infant young child feeding, nutrition rather. So these are some of the factors that aggregate to really drive the issue down further.
What about you, Dr. Mohammed Idris? What have you generally found in your approach to this?
Well, maybe coming back to the question that she asked, there are many determinants, what we call the social determinants, that includes the practices of our individuals and our people. You find out that even in some places where the food is available, the practice of that combination that you talked about may be very poor. They do not know how to process the food, how to identify those nutrients of food, nutrient-rich food that will really be helpful, especially when we talk about the first 1,000 days of a child's life. That brings us to the issue of how the brain grows and what the child needs to be able to optimally grow right from the time that the child is in the womb. And then we also have other issues like illnesses, because of the poor hygienic environment that we have. A lot of the times you find out that children fall ill and they cannot be able to really take enough food. So there's poor nutrition and it's like a vicious circle. So that perpetuation actually throws them into malnutrition. So there are many factors really. Sometimes they don't even have access to services that are required. Immunization, ability to ensure that when a child comes down with diarrhea, they are able to manage that condition. So if a child is not properly positioned to survive, they tend to gravitate to become malnourished over time. And like I said, it starts from the time that the child is in the womb.
So is ANRIN focused on child malnutrition? And then some said, so is it that an adult cannot be malnourished?
So, Accelerating nutrition results in Nigeria is the intervention of federal government of Nigeria to the issue of malnutrition, and the objective is to increase the utilization of cost-effective and quality cost-effective services, nutrition services, and the way we work, we try to increase the supply and the demand. For the supply side, we're in the communities at different states where we work, providing services, those common services that would really have high impact in the lives of maternal,
such as what kind of service?
Okay, providing counseling for mothers when they are pregnant. We mentioned the first 1,000, how critical the first 1,000 days of life is. It starts from the womb. Immediately, the mother is well nourished first, and we do this by administering the IFA, iron and folic acid, to pregnant women. We ensure that they take the adequate doses, that is required for the effective growth, for their well-being first, and the effective growth of the babies they are carrying. And again, we still do we provide such services to pregnant women, you counsel them for exclusive breastfeeding, at the delivery of the child, counseling we provide complementary feeding for micronutrient supplementation, when the child is between the age of 6 months and 59 months, we do that. And we ensure that, such services, zinc and ORS, she made mention about little illnesses that should not even drive a child to further assault, but when they have diarrhea, they are taught, women are taught, mothers are taught how to provide ORS with zinc that will help them to recuperate and get their energy back. And apart from doing that, we still provide services at the primary healthcare centers where food demonstrations. We know everything should not be about the pharmaceutical interventions. Food demonstrations still go on at the community level, at the health facilities, but at the community level, we do a lot of counseling and we collect data directly from those service points up onto the national level, where we look at this data, analyze them, we'll see where our interventions are doing well and where we can further improve on them.
There's a popular saying that if you don't eat your food as medicine, you eat medicine as food. Yeah. And we sincerely hope that, our mothers don't have to eat medicine, or even children eat medicine as food. Dr. Kwano, let me ask you how it's been. What has the acceptance rate been like? Because I know that next week you're having an engagement with religious leaders, and people wonder what exactly is the bearing with nutrition and engaging religious leaders. But how has it been accepted? For instance, trying to give women folic acid and iron tablets. Has it been widely accepted in the areas where you currently have presence?
Yes, definitely. In fact, it's very, very encouraging to see women and child caregivers uptaking some of these services. Let me quickly talk about the issue of the ANRIN project again. Mm-hmm. It's largely preventive, more like ensuring that the counseling that the National Program Manager had mentioned, our women, our caregivers, our duty bearers, especially those community leaders that are influencers, they've been able to uptake some of this information. They now know what it means to really situate our children, our women, to be well nourished, so that they could also be able to survive the rigors of life. The counseling has helped a great deal to pass on those messages and information. that makes for improved maternal, infant, and young child nutrition practices. In addition, we also have had a chance of meeting them in their homes, not just waiting for them to patronize the health facilities, but meeting them in their homes to make sure that these services are made available. We call them the basic package of nutrition services. She has mentioned them. In addition, we also have deworming. Children, we all know that some of the key things that prevents them from getting the right nutrients for them to thrive is because of the infestation, worm infestation. So the deworming has helped to reduce, that burden, and they're able to survive it. So that acceptance is really very high. And in fact, they are very, very much aware, much more than before the ANRIN project came on board. We've also had an opportunity of engaging with community structures, the ward development committees, the community volunteers, various other groups that work at the community level.
It's a good thing you just highlighted, because I was about to ask, how many are you people? Imagine that you're maybe situated in the state capital and you have to get to all of the local governments, primary healthcare centers. What system, what structure do you walk through?
Well, first and foremost, we have the community intervention, which non-state actors have helped to deliver this basic package of nutrition services. They go house to house, and they've been able to reach a substantial. Actors. Yeah, we have private sector involvement, working within the existing structures at the community and state level. At the community level, we have what we call the service providers, the food soldiers, the community volunteers that have been able to go house to house to deliver these services. This has created more awareness on the need to sustain some of these efforts. And it has also led to a mobilization of our community members to patronize and utilize our healthcare delivery services.
So why the engagement with religious leaders?
Well, we've seen the result from the polio. If you recall how we battled with polio, where their non-involvement had actually led to the prolonged, period before we could, eradicate polio in Nigeria. We've also seen the intervention in HIV, where community leaders have really been very helpful in engaging and, ensuring that the communities are brought along in terms of information. Yeah, and they are key influencers. People listen to them.
Isn't this one particularly different? Because this has also got to do with perhaps what they can afford, how they can combine them, as opposed to those other ones that seem somewhat straightforward.
And like we said, these are multifactorial. There are many factors. It's not just one. We know that poverty is very rife in most of our communities, but there are communities where even where the food is available, people don't think it's important to set aside some for the children and the women. They carry most of these products to the market for commercial purposes and then leave very little within the homes for this very important vulnerable population group to benefit from. So there's a lot going on at the community level, beyond the poverty that we see, beyond the shortage of maybe food that you see in some communities. There's also the need to say the little that is available, what are they doing to ensure that these critical population groups get the right nutrients to survive?
So again, if I may come in, I mentioned earlier that we try to ensure that the supply side of nutrition is there, providing the services. At the same time, we drive the demand, through the second component of the project, which is the social and behavioral change communication. We do that through the mass media campaign. We have developed materials, that are on the airwaves, the jingles to let people know, those essential methods, and again, through the interpersonal communication, through the faith leaders. That's where they come in. And we know, and we work together with them to develop materials on how to educate them, the faith leaders themselves. And a pastor going for a wedding to join couples in a wedding has an opportunity to tell them, madam, when you're pregnant, please ensure that you attend your antenatal services and you take your medications, the way, and they can educate them on the right path to take towards a healthy pregnancy period and at the same time, healthy delivery. And again, we've spoken to them, key life events, they participate there, they go for a naming ceremony, both at the two religious body. They are part of it and we've trained them, we've been working with them over time. We have materials that we've developed, but we now see an opportunity to ensure the sustainability of this work that we started over the years when we started this project to ensure that, okay, apart from the project, let's see how we can translate into this being in the community with the faith leaders themselves.
Well, I know my colleague Ayo has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Mwakwe. Let me begin with Mrs. Madam Mohammed Idris. I see that this whole nutrition thing has the previous government, for instance, had what they call a national multi-sectoral plan of action on nutrition. I don't know how far it has worked, until now. It's just 1 year before that national action plan will elapse. And we also understand that there were some partnerships with some key stakeholders. You mentioned the private sector, they are involved. The Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Health, Federal Ministry of Health is involved. But more importantly, the Nigerian Governors Forum. Can you tell us what kind of contribution the government of a state is expected to make, and how cooperative have they been? Because they're not just talking to the Commissioner for Health, they're talking to the governor of the state about nutrition. Can you tell us about the collaboration, the working relationship with the governor in the state?
Yes, thank you very much. I think our governments, especially at the state level, have been very supportive and have also pushed, especially in terms of increasing the financing, that's the funding for running interventions, nutrition interventions. And let's not forget, like you've rightly said, that it's not just a health-led initiative. It's a multi-sectoral approach that is being deployed, and that's why we have the national as well as the state strategic plan of action, or multi-sectoral plan of action on nutrition. We've been able to get funding across to even other very key ministries, departments, and agencies that have a role to play. If you take, for instance, the Ministry of Human Services and Social Development, which is what we call it in Kaduna State, for instance, Women Affairs. For us, we've been able to get them to also play their role in ensuring that the plight of the women and the children, which is their constituency, is addressed. We also have the likes of the Ministries of Agriculture that have done a lot, especially in training women, in training farmers, in ensuring that the right seedlings or stocks of food products are being produced. And that way we are assured of household food security. We also have a Ministry for education. If you're talking about literacy, we are talking about the messaging that needs to go out across the different age groups, the life course, as we call it. We need to have people to have the right information so that they can make informed choices and they'll be able to know how to utilize some of this information to their benefit. And then we have ministries like even transport, where we expect people to be able to access. You have to have the right roads, you have to have people having access in a way that they're able to transport themselves to the facilities where these services are offered. So we've done a lot in engaging at that level and ensuring that there's proper coordination, and our state government is in the forefront, especially in providing the necessary resources, the funding to be able to provide these services. And we are, as ANRIN project, have worked very closely with our state government. We have what we call the Counterpart Commitment Fund that our state governments have made. And such funds are used to ensure that this multi-sectoral intervention across board is being serviced, and the services are provided right to the community level.
Well, perhaps that really is the, I mean, that you mentioned something now about, in education, getting the message to the people. And so let me take that to Dr. Sholanke. Well, it's different strokes for different folks, some might say. While there is a generic understanding of nutrition, what constitutes or contributes to nutritional shortchanging, so to speak, in the various parts of the country might differ. You want to give us some idea of exactly what we are dealing with in the different regions, and whether or not people even have the right messaging about what nutrition really means. In some parts of the country, all they are concerned is just put something in the tummy and they're just good. But in terms of educating people, in terms of communicating with people, so they know the right things to do to help make the spendings justify the investment of governments in ensuring that we take down the nutrition figures, the challenging nutrition figures? What's the communication like, and what kind of feedback are you getting from people?
Okay, so for nutrition itself is the science of food and how it affects the body. There are different components of the food that we take in. We have the carbohydrate, the protein, fats, fiber, dietary fiber, water, and vitamins and minerals. If you are able to combine all this in the right quantities and the right qualities, you must have been addressing the nutritional status of the individual you're talking about. So the messaging starts from how a woman at delivery will initiate the process of breastfeeding, within the first hour of delivery. This is one of the messages that we're putting out there, initiation of breastfeeding. We counsel the women, we let them know the importance and and how beneficial the first milk that comes out for the baby, the colostrum, how important it is. So this is one of the messages that we have there. We're talking about complementary feeding. So after the first 6 months of life, what else? How do you combine all the food components together in the right quantity, in the appropriate quantity, to ensure that the baby benefits maximally? So it's another message that we put out there. When a child has diarrhea, like my colleague has mentioned earlier, we know the impact of diarrhea with a child. The diarrhea can actually kill a child within a space of 2 hours. If a child has severe diarrhea, the child can go immediately. But before you are able to access the facility, what can you do as a mother at home? The use of ORS, with combination with zinc, deworming, and all those basic package of nutrition services that we have there. So these are the kind of messages that we have out there, and they are there as part of our mass media campaign. Also for breastfeeding, for pregnant women and lactating women, the importance of the use of iron and folic acid to prevent anemia, because a well-nourished mother will be able to provide the right quantity, and be able to lactate appropriately to be able to feed the child. So these are the messages that we have out there, and we've got positive responses to this, and it's been disaggregated into various local languages, not only in English language. All the states that are implementing ANRIN project, we have them translated into Yoruba, Hausa, and English, and Igbo and English. So everybody can get this message, not only for the mothers, caregivers, fathers, and anyone that has the prerogative of care for any child at all.
Dr. Sholanke, the question that I would like you to please answer is, how do you get feedback? How do you know that the messaging that is being put out, you are doing a lot of work, there is no doubt about it. But, we're talking about people who can hardly read. Some, once it gets to, okay, this thing is from government, there is that natural distrust, so to speak. How do you get feedback from people that these things really do get to them, and that the investment of government at various levels are being justified? That's the thing I would like you to help us answer.
Apart from the fact that we have community-based services, we have counselors, people who are working in the community on the project at the state level, at the community level. We're conducting a survey to know the impact of our mass media campaign, knowledge, attitude, and practices. So we collected data before the interventions. After the intervention, after a space of 6 months to 1 year, the midline and the end line. So we'll be able to say, is our intervention working at all? That's a form of feedback that we get. When we have the baseline, data collection that we have, on knowledge, attitude, and practices. At the midline, we have another survey to know, are we making impact with this messaging that's out there? And at endpoint, what are the impact over time, over the space of 1 year that we've been on this campaign?
In addition,
yeah.
we do have responses coming from our community structures. We have what we call the GRC, the mechanism that processes what is happening at the community level. So on a routine basis, we get some of these messages or information coming from the community members themselves on their uptake and their satisfaction with the services that have been provided. We call it the safeguard due diligence.
I assume that since the VP said he's passionate about this, you're getting a lot of support from him, I reckon. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So is there a target? Since we have about, 33% of severe malnutrition, are we targeting, or do we have that figure? Or at least want to see how much we can eradicate or reduce?
So for the results framework that we have is to be able to see how we can shift the head of the needle from the 34%, 35 or 34% that we have currently, midway.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least.
All right. We have to run. Dr. Joalakwe Sholanke and Dr. Zainab Kwaru Mohammed Idris, both working on the ANRIN project to reduce acute, severe malnutrition. So yes, it is a thing, and we lose a lot of money in that annually. We understand from figures. Sometimes you're surprised at these figures when you see them. You never pay that much attention. Thank you both, and all the best to both of you.
Thank you.